What's the best material to make a watch case out of? The answer might seem obvious, but there's way more options than you'd think. I'm going over every one of them today and ranking them from worst to best, based on a variety of metrics like affordability, aesthetics, and the unique properties of each. For a material to be considered, I have two simple criteria. First, it must have been used as the main material in the case or bracelet for more than one watch. I'm not considering bezel, dial, or movement materials. And second, for alloys, there's an infinite number of ratios possible, so all alloys of the same compounds will be ranked together. I'll also be using a few key measures throughout the video. For material hardness, I'll be using the Vickers Pyramid Number, or HV. Just know that the larger the number, the harder and more scratch resistant the material is. For brittleness, I'll be using fracture toughness. Low fracture toughness indicates a more brittle material, one that shatters or breaks easily from applied force. Generally, there is an inverse relationship between fracture toughness and hardness. The more hard and scratch resistant material is, the more brittle it tends to be, and vice versa. Maximizing durability is about a good balance between these two characteristics. I'll be grading each material based on 5 categories. Affordability, how expensive watches are using the material. Durability, how scratch, fracture, wear, and corrosion resistant it is. Aesthetics and variance, the variety it has in different colors, shine, and finishes. Lightness, how dense the material is. Least dense scores higher. And any unique properties it has over others. And remember, while the properties are facts, each ranking is my opinion. I cannot put everything in S tier. And with that, let's start with what I call raw materials. Popular choices that serve a distinct purpose and advantage in some way, but are often not the ideal option. Plastic is perhaps the most infamous case material, and it's not without good reasons, even if it is a little bit overhated. Its lack of longevity and durability is its main disadvantage. It has practically no scratch resistance and can weaken significantly from temperature shifts. On the other hand, it has the lowest density of any material, which can make it feel cheap, but that's mostly preference. Plastic also has the widest range of colors and is the most affordable material. Depending on the type of plastic or resin, its malleability can give it a good amount of shock resistance too. There's a reason G-Shocks are nearly all made of resin. Objectively, they have the worst properties of materials for a case, but they have some distinct upsides that push them a bit up in the list. D tier. Carbon is a non-metal element sought after because of its extremely low density and high strength to weight ratio. It's famously dark gray to black in color and not suitable for manufacturing on its own. You usually see it used as carbon fiber in other industries, but not often in watches. Instead, the fibers are chopped up into small pieces and formed into forged carbon using resin. Which brings us back to plastic. And that's the problem with carbon. Its properties are defined by its weakest link. In practice, the strength and scratch resistance of the carbon fiber is diminished by the resin that holds it together. It gives it the same hardness as plastic, a similar density, and not as much strength as you'd expect. It isn't uncommon for forged carbon lugs to completely snap off. At the very least, every carbon watch is unique and has a distinct aesthetic. I'll rate it the same as plastic. D tier. Bronze is a classic alloy of copper and tin, at around 88 and 12% respectively. It has a shine and color a bit lighter than copper, for obvious reasons, and a density slightly higher than average. It's probably the most unique, common, and affordable metal aesthetically, because of the patina it forms from copper's oxidation and chemical reactions over time. Typically, this would be considered a flaw, but in bronze's case, it's actually desirable. The patina gives a discolored and weathered look, a sort of maritime vibe. Some even expedite the process using vinegar because the look is so desirable. It's a bit softer than average too, but the scratches actually work in the aesthetic's favor. My favorite examples of bronze watches are probably from Oris, particularly their Big Crown Pointer date. On paper, bronze should be rated low, but its unique look and overall mediocre characteristics land it into C tier. Imagine all of the lackluster qualities of bronze, but worse, without the charm of the patinaed look. That's essentially what brass is. Brass is another alloy of copper, but with zinc instead of tin, making it a more yellowish color. It's about the same density and a little softer than bronze too. The problem is that brass is usually plated with another metal or coating, so you never see it, except when the coating gets scratched. It's also less corrosion resistant too, so sweat eats away at it much faster. Because of this, brass watches aren't very common except in budget brands like Timex and vintage pieces, and they're nearly all plated. There are some examples of purely exposed ones, and their patina is relatively similar to bronze, although many tend to still prefer the bronze. Brass is usually an indicator of a cheaply made watch that won't stand the test of time. D tier. Silver is another metal that oxidizes to form patina similar to bronze and brass. It's typically a purity of 92.5%, alloyed with other metals, called sterling silver. It's quite soft, with a hardness similar to bronze, and a density around 25% higher than stainless steel. When polished, silver is incredibly bright, comparable to platinum, and serves as a great affordable replacement for it. Over time though, it darkens and loses its luster, becoming more black and gray, in comparison to bronze's greenish patina. Some people enjoy this, but I don't think it has the same charm that bronze does. Watches using silver aren't too common, with Tudor's 925 Black Bay being the only notable recent example. It's beautiful when polished, and can patina if you like that. I'm putting it in C tier. Aluminum is a great metal when used as an alloy, but as a pure material, it's arguably the worst metallic choice for a watch case. It has an incredibly low hardness for a metal, corrodes easily, and has trouble maintaining a finish over time. It has a really low density, which technically is an advantage, but usually is just associated with lower quality. It's quite malleable too, so deformation from impacts is common. Aluminum is really only used in extreme budget watches, because its only advantage is its low price. Unfortunately though, the affordability doesn't outweigh the cons. E tier. Real quick, if you find the scientific and analytical approach to watches more interesting than the typical review-focused channels, consider subscribing if you haven't already. These videos take a ton of research and time to make, this one especially. If you want to see more of this sort of content, I upload a new video weekly, usually on the weekends. Thanks. Let's move on to some of the more exotic materials in watch cases. All of these are uncommon materials that you probably didn't even know watches were made of. What if you took the most fragile part of a watch's exterior and decided to just make the entire case out of it? That's what you're getting with sapphire watches. Don't get me wrong, they're extremely cool, visually stunning, and a really low density, and obviously an exceptionally high scratch resistance. But this makes it extremely brittle. It's a constant worry when owning one that a slight impact will destroy the watch, which is unacceptable given how it's one of the most expensive choices. It's an impressive material, but too much of a liability. F tier. Niobium is a transition metal you've probably never heard of. Its physical properties are quite similar to tantalum, which we'll get to later, and visually it resembles platinum. It's slightly softer than stainless steel at 140 Vickers and about the same density. It's really common in jewelry because of how hypoallergenic it is, but in watches it's probably the most rare material. This is likely because it's a complete pain to machine and relatively rare. I could only find 3 examples of it being used, 2 from a brand called Dewis, and they weren't super expensive, which is a plus. It'd be interesting to see more brands use this, although I don't see why they would. C tier. You've heard about meteorite dials, but probably not meteorite cases, of which there are a few. It'll vary per sample, but generally meteorite is made of mostly iron and nickel. This makes it similar to steel in density and hardness, without the advantage of the finish steel can have. Instead, you get that distinct and unique geometric and glittering pattern, which is attractive in its own right. There aren't a ton of meteorite case watches, but notable examples include David Rutan's Streamline and Debethune's Dreamwatch 5, which was actually completely heat blued as well. Price-wise, these vary, but they're not the most unreasonable. They're polarizing and have middle-of-the-road properties. C tier. Rocks, stones, and concrete is a broad category, with the common factor that they all have low densities and are often semi-porous. Their hardnesses vary though. Tissot's granite rock watch is about 850 Vickers, among the highest on the list, while Hublot's concrete jungle likely has very low scratch resistance, if any. This category's problem is that they're difficult to shape and lack the durability for a long-lasting watch. Stones and minerals are famously brittle and not shock resistant. They'll chip and won't stand up with daily use. That being said, there is a case to be made of their artistic purpose and aesthetic, and I get that. But they're better as art than as a watch, in my opinion. E tier. Zirconium is a transition metal right next to niobium, but significantly more common. It's comparable to titanium, with a similar color, hardness, and slightly higher density. Occasionally, zirconium is used with titanium as a Damascus too. But most of that is irrelevant though, because of its unique oxidation properties. Zirconium oxidizes with air at high temperatures, which causes a black oxide coating to form. This coating, zirconium dioxide, is a ceramic and extremely hard with the vigors of around 1400, similar to sapphire. Because it's part of the metal, it can't be flaked or chipped, and it has none of the brittleness, as the case is still zirconium inside. Of course, black zirconium limits the possible aesthetic variation, but it looks cool in its own right. It isn't exactly cheap either, but that should be expected for its rarity and properties. I'm giving it B tier. Before we get any further, I think it's important to discuss the platings and surfaces cases can have, because zirconium isn't the only way watches can have coating on the outside. Although I've called this category gold plating, the same applies for other metals used in the same process, such as chrome. Gold is probably the best shot it has for a high rating though, so I'm ranking that. If you can't afford a gold case, one option is to get a gold plated watch. Plating is done by electroplating, essentially depositing gold particles onto the case through an electrolyte solution with a current. The resultant coating is around half a micron thick, about 100 times thinner than a human hair. In practice, any scratch or erosion over time from brushing the coating exposes the metal underneath because it's so thin. Electroplating is not meant to last. You'll mostly find it on vintage watches because it's been largely replaced with the next category. Electroplating is definitionally a lower end and quality process. E tier. Physical vapor deposition, or PVD for short, is a process that uses a vacuum chamber to vaporize and condense material into a thin film onto another object, the watch in our case. PVD has advantages over plating in two ways. First, the bond of the film to the case is significantly stronger. This increases the durability significantly. And second, a wider range of materials can be used. Better materials increases durability and gives a huge range of color options. The most common in the watch industry are titanium nitride and DLC, although there are many others. Titanium nitride is an extremely hard ceramic used as a substitute for gold plating. When you see a budget gold watch like the PRX or any gold Seiko, they're using this. It's incredibly scratch resistant and has a great shine and color. DLC, or diamond-like carbon, is a carbon-based film that's black in color and even harder than sapphire. It's probably the most scratch resistant option you can have for a case. The only downsides to PVD is that you're relatively limited with finishing styles, and scratches expose the bare metal underneath. The impressive durability alleviates this though. I'm putting it near the top of A tier. Surface hardening and treatment is another way brands increase scratch resistance of their watches. Zinn have their tegimented steel. Trosca and Damasco surface harden their cases, and many other brands have their own versions as well. What gives this process an advantage is that it isn't a coating, but a part of the metal itself. It maintains most of the color and finishing of the metal while increasing the hardness to over 1,000 Vickers in some cases. This has similar pitfalls to other coatings regardless though. Scratches that make it through the surface will go down to the bare metal, just like PVD or plating, and it can't really be repaired. At the very least, they're affordable and still look like the metal underneath. A tier. Do I even need to explain this one? Gem set watches are mainly popular among the ultra wealthy as a jewelry and a way to flaunt wealth. These pretty much always look horrible, but at least the entire case isn't made of them. The gems are set though, so they can't withstand any impact at all, similar to a ring. Even though there are some attractive examples of cases with gems, they're few and far between, and horrifically expensive. F tier. Gem set watches are far from the only statement materials out there. Some of the most prolific case materials are those that I would consider to be luxury materials, intended to be flashy, expensive, and valuable. Gold is an ultra classic case material. It's a transition metal that's tarnish resistant and extremely shiny, sought after for its color and rarity. In its pure form, it's too soft to use, so to add strength, it's alloyed with silver or copper usually. Copper dominant mixtures will give it a red or pink tone, while silver dominant will lean more towards white or pale yellow. The most common purity for watches is 18 karat, which is 75% gold by mass. Each brand's exact ratio is usually proprietary, like Omega's Moonshine Gold, so the hardness and density varies. Generally though, 18 karat gold tends to have hardness around 130 Vickers, softer than steel, and about double the density, which wears heavy on the wrist. It doesn't have the best properties, but it's the original luxury aesthetic that makes up for it with its unique colors and sheen. B tier. White gold is on the completely white end of the spectrum, caused by a silver or palladium dominant alloy. This gives it a generic silver metal look, often with a warm glow depending on the ratios. Some brands plate their white gold with rhodium too, which does give the watch a brighter white look with more scratch resistance, although it's a plating, so it will wear off eventually, and it's often not obvious or stated who are even doing this. White gold is definitely a if you know material, with a certain component of stealth wealth to it. But if you take the mental association of value out of it, compared to other choices, it looks the same, weighs more, often scratches easier, and costs multiple times as much. C tier. Platinum is a transition metal characterized by its rarity, luster, and extremely high density, the highest among any material in watches. When we talk about platinum, we're typically referring to platinum 950, which is 95% platinum alloyed with a plethora of other metals. This alloy is hyperallergenic and uniquely inoxidizable in air, but has a slightly lower hardness than 18 karat gold. Because of its density, machining and finishing it is significantly more challenging than gold, which is why it's usually more expensive despite gold costing more per ounce. Aesthetically, it's extremely similar to rhodium plating for significantly more money and an unwieldy weight on the wrist. It's a bit of a ripoff for the properties you're paying for. D tier. Palladium is a transition metal just above platinum, with nearly identical properties, except that it's half as dense. It's easier to machine and costs less per ounce, and yet it's way less common to see used for watch cases. Why is that? Well, palladium is significantly more rare than platinum, perhaps 15 times more so. In combination with this, somewhere along the line, platinum has been associated more with higher perceived value. It feels expensive from the weight, and has had more marketing power and awareness overall. People are more willing to spend a ton on platinum because they know what it is. That being said, there are palladium watches. They're just extremely expensive and used by brands like Moser, Vacheron, MB&F, and other high horology names. If it was a bit more common, I would rate it higher, but because it's so similar to platinum, I'm also putting it in D tier. Tantalum is a transition metal that has a density close to 18 karat gold, hyperallergenic, and a Vickers hardness of about 200, right around a high quality steel, making it the hardest elemental material without a coating. What makes tantalum sit into the luxury category is its price, which is similar to platinum. This is because it's among the most difficult materials to machine. Voutilainen, one of the greatest living watchmakers, has said that if platinum is a 3 out of 10 difficulty, tantalum is a 10 out of 10. It's a sticky metal that requires constant tool replacing, and many factories will outright refuse to work with it. The trade-off, though, is an amazingly unique blue-gray color and shine unlike any other metal. Many high horology brands have worked with the material, such as AP with various Royal Oaks, FP Journe, Gronfeld, and even Omega with a few Seamaster 300Ms. I'll put it slightly above platinum for its uniqueness and lower density. C tier. Ceramics are a wide category of materials, but generally are characterized by their extremely high scratch resistance, approaching that of sapphire, with the downside of brittleness. The most common compound is zirconium dioxide, the very same from zirconium's ranking, although titanium carbide and a few others are used as well. It's created by forming the zirconium dioxide powder at high temperatures to form a hard ceramic that can be almost any color depending on the additives used. Finishing is possible, although not too common or varied, and many tend to be fairly light, much less than steel. As I said, ceramics are brittle because of their hardness, and although infrequent, cases and lugs are known to crack or snap when sustaining impact or pressure in the wrong places. Ceramics tend to be rather expensive because of that tedious process to form them, which is why they're in the luxury tier. It's a great material with a bit of unreliability. B tier. Tungsten carbide is another ceramic I wanted to rank separately because it's a bit different than your typical one. Unlike zirconium dioxide ceramics, tungsten carbide looks a lot more like a metal. It has a dark gray or silver look and is often polished to a mirror finish. It has a hardness even higher than traditional ceramics, and if you look at any older examples of the material, like the Rado Diostar, they usually still look brand new even today. It has a density similar to 18 karat gold, and a fracture toughness somewhere around the same as traditional ceramics. It isn't very common anymore, probably because it's quite difficult to work with. While it does have some amazing qualities, it lacks the visual diversity and low density of other ceramics. It's relatively affordable, but you just don't see it anymore. C tier. So far, we've covered primarily single element or compound materials. But what about the advanced alloys? Often, combining multiple of the previous materials results in a product with the properties of each. Cermet is what you get when you combine the extreme scratch resistance of ceramics with the strength, certainty, and aesthetic of metal. Cermets are a broad category of ceramic metal alloys that solve most of the issues of ceramics. Every high-end brand seemingly has their own proprietary formula. Omega pioneered the material in the 80s with an aluminum ceramic alloy. Hublot has magic gold, a sort of gold ceramic, and a bronze ceramic alloy in their Bullet Bang. And Parmigiani more recently has created Ultra Cermet. Their properties vary, but generally they have a similar hardness to ceramic, low densities, and a higher toughness closer to metal. Their only downside is that they're really expensive and lose the color variety of traditional ceramics. All in, it's a perfect material, but pretty unachievable for most. A tier. If ceramic metal alloys are called cermets, bioceramic should be called cerplast. Because as much as I want the marketing to be true, they really are just plastic, unfortunately. Used almost exclusively by Swatch, bioceramic is a blend of 2/3 zirconium oxide ceramic and 1/3 biosourced material derived from castor oil. In practice, it has a scratch resistance, density, and strength similar to plastic, with a bad tendency to snap on small parts. At the very least, bioceramic has the benefit of being pretty cheap, and the variety of practically any matte material you'd want. Still though, if it walks like a plastic and quacks like a plastic, you get the idea. D tier. Cobalt chrome is a silver white alloy most commonly used in the medical industry as implants for its high wear resistance. It has a density similar to steel, a sheen comparable to platinum, and a hardness around 400 Vickers, higher than any other non-ceramic based material. It's incredibly rare to see used, mostly by Lumtech in the early 2010s, Roger Dubuis, and a singular G-Shock that has a cobalt chrome bezel. Based on its properties, it's close to an ideal candidate for a watch case. Lumtech priced theirs reasonably, but Roger Dubuis, not so much. Even the G-Shock with just the bezel is around $4,000. I'd love to see this used more and the potential fully realized for it, but for now, I'll put it into B tier. Magnesium alloys are perhaps the strangest alloy on this list. Magnesium itself is an alkaline earth metal with an exceptionally low density and high reactivity. When alloyed with transition metals such as aluminum, it becomes a stable material that behaves like a traditional metal, gray in color, relatively low hardness, but with an unbelievably low weight. In fact, the lightest mechanical watch ever made, Ming's LW01, is made of this material and weighs only 9 grams, or about the weight of 2 sheets of paper. The alloy's downside is clearly its lack of durability, as they generally need to be coated to protect them, so you aren't going to be seeing the bare material often. But you're buying this for the properties, not the look, and you're certainly paying for it. The LW01 went for around $20,000, and Richard Mille has used this material too, which you know isn't cheap. All in though, you're essentially getting material that has the best properties of plastic and carbons, while having most of the strength that metals have. B tier. Finally, we've reached what I consider to be the best of all the case materials. These have the best balance of properties while maintaining an affordable price. Titanium is a transition metal known primarily for being hypoallergenic and having low density, high strength, and resistance to corrosion. It comes in 2 main versions, Grade 2 and Grade 5. Grade 2 is the more pure of the two, at 99%, and usually what most think of when they imagine titanium. It's dull gray in color, softer than steel at around 145 Vickers, and fairly reactive for a metal, forming a self-healing oxide layer whenever it touches air, which makes scratches less visible. At around half the density of steel, titanium feels extremely light on the wrist. Grade 2 is generally a poorly finished material, which is its biggest drawback. Most watches that use it, such as Tudor's Pelagos, are relatively boring gray and aren't really polished. Grade 2 is also pretty affordable and a great comfortable alternative to steel, besides the aesthetics. A tier. Grade 5 titanium, on the other hand, is only about 90% pure, and is alloyed with aluminum and vanadium. It takes all the great properties of grade 2 and removes all the downsides. It maintains the same low density, but is significantly harder at 350 Vickers, among the highest of any alloy on this list. It's brighter in color as well and can be finished and polished to a high degree, similar to any other lustrous metal. Grand Seiko's high-intensity titanium is likely a form of this alloy, which allows for their famous Zaratsu polishing. Grade 5 is a bit more expensive, but not overtly so. Many pieces made with it are still affordable, just not in the budget tier. In my opinion, it's the single best material a watch can be made of, and a strict upgrade over grade 2 or stainless steel. S tier. And I've saved the most prolific for last, stainless steel. It's the industry standard and the material I've compared all others to. It's an alloy of iron, chromium, and nickel, which means it's not hypoallergenic, but that's its only downside. While it may not be the best at any one category, it's a perfect balance of them. It has an average density, great corrosion resistance, above average hardness for a metal, an amazing aesthetic, and is incredibly affordable. Machinists love to work with it. It's easy to polish and finish, and overall is one of the most ideal materials to make a watch out of, perhaps only bested by grade 5 titanium. There's a ton of variations and alloys of it too. 316L is the most common, followed by the shinier but softer 904L, and then followed by a plethora of proprietary alloys of varying properties. Each has their own pros and cons, but they generally even out in the end. Unless we start mining other planets sometime soon, stainless steel will remain to be the standard. It has to be S tier. Because I didn't rank one-off watches in this list, I wanted to use today's obscure reference as a way to discuss 4 meme case materials that I found interesting and completely unique. First is Moser's Swiss Mad Watch, made completely out of Swiss cheese. This watch is completely Swiss made, from the movement and dial, which is reminiscent of the Swiss flag, to the cheese, and even the cow the milk and the leather came from are Swiss. The case is made possible by encasing the cheese in resin, and it's a one of one. It costs 1,081,291 Swiss francs in reference to Switzerland's founding date. Next, we have Lowenthal Berlin's coffee watch, made of recycled coffee. The idea was to create a carbon-neutral watch using leftover coffee grounds from cafes around Berlin, which are then combined with polymers to create a sustainable case. Supposedly, the watch actually has a bit of a coffee aroma too, which is certainly unique. It's got a Swiss quartz movement inside this time though, so it's actually affordable at around $300. The next watch is total crap, literally. Archia's Copperlight watch is made of fossilized dinosaur dung. There isn't a ton of info on this watch online, as it was released nearly 20 years ago. It went for about $20,000 in an extremely small batch run. I hope at the very least that this one didn't have an aroma. Finally, we've got HYT's H1 Cigar, a resin watch with cigar leaves encased inside, which made every one unique. The dial and movement are insane on this too, as it was made by HYT, but that's for another discussion. It was limited to 8 pieces and likely eye-wateringly expensive. Hopefully with today's video, you learned about a few new watches and materials you hadn't heard of before, and weren't too upset by any of the rankings. I think it's important to note that these ranking videos are really just an excuse to talk about different topics in depth in a format that is easily digestible. I've gotten a lot of angry comments about my rankings, but they really aren't meant to be taken that seriously. Everyone enjoys different qualities, and what I find important will be different from other people. Because after all, watches are really just jewelry. They don't need to be optimal. With that being said, let me know in the comments what your favorite case material is, or any you found interesting that you hadn't heard of before. And if you enjoyed this video and its format, make sure to watch my complication ranking video as well. I go over every complication and rank them on several different metrics, just like this video. Thank you for taking the time to watch.